A diretora do documentário All the Time in the World, Suzanne Crocker, partiu justamente em busca de recordar, de viver esse tempo sem tempo. Ela documentou 9 meses de sua vida, isolada com o marido e os 3 filhos, em uma pequena cabana no meio da floresta, sem estradas próximas, eletricidade, água encanada, internet, TV, telefones ou relógios. Suzanne irá agora relatar como foi se desconectar da vida sobrecarregada de tecnologia e reconectar a família com o ambiente natural, os pais com as crianças e as crianças com a natureza. Seja bem-vinda, Suzanne. Somente um aviso, aqueles que ainda não retiraram os fones de tradução podem retirar agora, porque a palestra será em inglês. Nós pedimos desculpas por não esperar, mas fiquem à vontade se for preciso. E durante a apresentação, quem tiver perguntas já pode ir anotando, levantar a mão que as recepcionistas vão passar para recolher, porque depois teremos uma mesa de conversa.
Bom dia. Obrigada, Alana Institute, for asking me to speak and for putting on the Children and Nature seminar, which is a topic which is so incredibly important. This is my very first time in Brazil, and I love it. And what I love most is just the genuine warmth that I felt from every Brazilian person who I have met in the last few days. So, obrigada for that. I live in the northern part of Canada, and not too far from the Arctic Circle, in a state of Canada called the Yukon. And the Yukon is about the same size as the country of Paraguay. But in the Yukon, we only have 35,000 people. And 30,000 of those people all live in one city. I live in the second biggest city of the Yukon, with 1,500 people. Now, some people kind of laugh and roll their eyes when they hear about where I live and how I felt that we had to leave our so-called hectic life and go out on the land. But I think, we take our personalities wherever we go. And even though I live in this small, idyllic place surrounded by nature, my life was really busy. My husband and I were family physicians. Sometimes we were the only physicians in our community. The nearest hospital was 500 kilometers away. My husband would often go to work after breakfast and not come home until the kids were asleep. I actually retired from being a physician in order to spend more time with my kids. And then I quickly became super involved with different environmental projects, started filmmaking, and my kids would say, "Mom, since you retired, you're actually more busy than when you were working." And so I felt that we were starting to grow apart as a family, and that was the reason why we decided we had to go into the bush and take this time to reconnect. And even though in our community, we left our community potentially without doctors because we couldn't find anyone to replace us, our community wasn't angry with us. They understood what we were doing, they celebrated it, and they said, "Good for you." And so off we went. And we lived in this small cabin in the middle of nowhere, and where you couldn't drive to it. And we had our 3 kids who were aged 10, 8, and 4, 2 cats and a dog, my husband, myself, and that was us. I'm going to show you the trailer from the film just to give you a sense of it, and it has Portuguese subtitles.
Did you know a platypus is the only mammal who lays eggs?
Keep on going. I thought mammal meant that they don't lay eggs. And why doesn't Mom lay an egg to have us?
In the city, it feels like we're not really connected.
I always felt like there wasn't enough time for the things that really counted. We packed up and headed 150 kilometers into the Yukon wilderness.
No running water, no electricity.
We had a lot of beans. Inside is our storage place, but outside is actually our home.
To get the freedom of time again, we had to free ourselves from the structure of time and see what would happen.
You know, we really didn't go in there with the intent that this will be our utopia forever. It was more of an opportunity for a reprieve. But there was also this bigger issue, which was the test of loneliness and the test of purpose and the test of cooperation.
Downstream, secret place.
You know, we thought, okay, 3 kids, small cabin, 9 months, no other kids. They're gonna drive each other crazy.
I want to walk to Marshmallow.
All the time,
And what we found was exactly the opposite.
all the time in the world, all the time in the world.
Yes, but a platypus is an exception. Just like there's a lot of exceptions in English. Think English is hard? Look at real life.
Cut it out, Sam.
It's really difficult to summarize what happened in 9 months in under 15 minutes, but I can sum it up in one sentence that we all agree with, that it truly was the best year of our life as a family. And the kids say it very well in the trailer, in the film, and as you see here. Even Tess, who was 4, she immediately was so comfortable in the forest. She would just go wandering off, following the cat, climbing over fallen trees, picking berries, sometimes much to her parents' concern, because we wouldn't know where she was, but she was just instantly comfortable in the woods. And when we were there, we had such an amazing connection with the natural world around us. You know, like if you asked me today what phase the moon is in, I don't think I can tell you. When we were in the bush, every day I knew the phase of the moon. I knew the weather intricately. I knew what the ice was doing on the river. And in the north, in the winter, there's quite a lot of darkness, and for 6 weeks we don't actually see any sun directly. And during a full moon in the winter, it's actually lighter at night than it is in the day. And there are actually moon shadows. So we were very aware of the animals, the plants, the weather, the moon, everything around us. And kids, of course, have this natural ability to play when left to their own devices, given permission and having some unstructured time. And so you can just imagine how much play went on when the kids were using the forest as their playground. They would go off for several kilometers with the dog. They named parts of the forest. They had fairy dwells. They had elven places. They played imaginary games all the time. They would turn a fallen tree into a horse and get up early in the morning to go and feed it. It was just amazing. My daughter Kate, who is 8, wrote a poem when we're in the bush, and I think it's very telling. And I'm just going to play it now from the film, and it's in English, but the translators will translate it for you.
For Mommy and Daddy, me, Kate, and Tess all worked together to make a book of poems that we wrote.
Nature. The tap of the woodpecker, the beat of the wing. That is what the forest does sing. You talk about cities that tick-tock all day. That is what cities do say. You must admit the forest is smart, but cities don't take it to their heart. Nature doesn't need us to stay alive, but we need nature to survive.
Those are the words of an 8-year-old. The kids also in the bush became very independent and resourceful. They used the same tools that we did. They used saws, draw knives, axes. They used matches to light fires. And we also all gained a better appreciation for where the things we use come from. We picked berries. We made all our food from scratch, so we baked our own bread. We made our own crackers. We even made ice cream, yogurt, cream cheese, and cheese from powdered milk. We, at Kate's suggestion, tapped birch trees and collected sap in the spring and made syrup from it. And, we heated our cabin with wood, we cooked with wood, so we gained a real appreciation for that, where that energy comes from. And we had to haul every drop of water we used from the rivers, often in the winter, having to break through the ice to get it. So we gained a great appreciation for where all the water that we used comes from. And in our regular life, we have a house full of things meant to entertain our kids. And yet, I would often hear them say they were bored and didn't know what to do. I actually think boredom is a great thing for kids if they're allowed to go with it. But the interesting thing was in the bush, in 9 months, I never once heard them say they were bored. They never once said they missed their friends. They never once said they wanted to go back to town. Their imaginations went crazy. They created their own books. They created their own games. They created, they sewed, they knitted, they made their own mitts. They carved things. This was a snake carved by my 10-year-old son. They created a utopian society when they thought about the future called Essex, for which they wrote its own history and wrote its own language. They sang songs. Instead of having like movie night once a week, we would gather with a big bowl of popcorn we made on the wood stove, and they would tell stories that they made up in their heads and their imaginations. And it just went on and on. My son spent hours carving with a penknife cogs and wheels from bark in order to make a cog-wheel little car. And it was fantastic. When you ask the kids what they appreciated most about their time in the bush, they'll say that undistracted time, but they'll also say the connection they felt with the family and how close we became as a family. We all slept together on one big mattress on the floor, which we called the family bed. And every night we would get tired around the same time. We would go to this family bed and we would read a novel out loud, maybe for, who knows, an hour. We didn't have clocks and watches, which was amazing. We'd get up in the morning about the same time, and while we waited for the cabin to warm up, we would continue to read again out loud for another hour or two. I think together we must have read over 50 novels. And it was that closeness as a family that was such a great bond. And another thing the kids will tell you that surprised them was how we, their parents, began to play again. And it surprised us too. We learned how to play again, and humor came back in our lives. And the best of our personalities came out again. Instead of coming home tired from a long day's work and being irritable and almost having the worst of ourselves shown for our family, it was the best of ourselves again that was shown. Another thing that surprised me is that the kids didn't get tired of being with us. It was like they were a bottomless sponge for time together. And I thought maybe it would be fun for the first month for them, and then they'd have enough of us. But no, that wasn't the case. And so what I learned from that time in the bush was many things. But I learned especially how important it is to me as a person for my own happiness to have real face-to-face connection with other people, not virtual connection, not digital connection. and also how important it is for me and for my own happiness to have time and connection spent in nature. This is my husband on a 40 below day. And now back in regular life, you know, it's my constant challenge to myself to remember that I don't have all the time in the world, but to make the most of the moments that I do have for the things that matter most in my life. Thank you. Obrigada.